I'm Jeremy with Poindexter G, and today we're taking a look at the Winchester Model 1873. So it's pretty much just between this and the Colt Single Action Army as to which one of these firearms is the most famous one from the Old West period, or the gun that won the West. The Winchester Model 1873 was released in 1873. You went from things that were single shots or muzzle loaders to things like this that have a tube magazine on it that you can just cram a bunch of rounds into. So let me tell you how we got to the Model 1873. This all goes back to the original Henry rifle. Now you're probably like, wait, what does a Henry got to do with a Winchester? The guy Henry that created the original Henry rifle was in a partnership with Winchester. The Henry itself has its origins in the Volition repeating rifle, or the volcanic repeating rifle, as well as the pistol. The heart of that volcanic pistol was the toggle link action that was inside of it. It was some toggle links that were in there that the lever was attached to. In the case of the pistol, a finger lever to actually move the bolt. Now the main issue with the volcanic pistol was the rocket ball ammunition that it used. Now the rocket ball you could think of as just kind of a hollowed out bullet. Just a bullet, they'd put the powder in it, put a primer at the end of it, and you didn't have a case. The reason that wasn't a really good idea is that hollowing out the bullet takes a lot of the mass out of it, less mass on the bullet, and you have less energy coming out. And also, you weren't able to put as much powder in there, so it wasn't able to fire it out as hard. And once again, that meant less velocity coming out of it. And once again, that means less energy coming out of there. And that ended up making a really, really anemic round that just didn't have any power to it there. Well, it was sometime after that where William Benjamin Henry started working on reworking that. And what he went to is the cartridge, which we're used to seeing today, which is the bullet with a brass case, the powder inside the case, and a primer on the end of it there. Once you got into that, you were able to put more powder in there, and you were able to put more mass on the projectile and got more energy out of it. And once they did that, the 1860 Henry really took off. You could load up 15 rounds in that Henry. And I want you to think about that, going from a muzzle loader, but going from that to being able to have 15 rounds in this thing. You could see why there was a famous Confederate general that proclaimed the Henry rifle as that damned Yankee rifle that you can load on Sunday and shoot all week. Now, while the Henry rifle was revolutionary, there were some problems with it. One of the biggest was the loading mechanism on it. Instead of having a gate on the side of it where you could put rounds in like this, you had a follower that went up and down the bottom of the tube that you'd have to push that follower forward, then rotate the front cap of the barrel over sideways. Then you could send rounds down into it that way, close it back, close the follower on it, and then it was loaded. So you had to work it from the front end of the rifle there. You really couldn't top off if there was anything already in there. Also, because you had that follower going on there, you weren't able to put a hand guard on it. You just had to rest your hand up against the metal, which when you started firing a bunch of rounds through it there really quickly, especially with that black powder, started heating up the barrel, and it would get really, really hot to the touch. You'd also have this follower that would move back as the rounds went out of there, and you'd have to do this little jump with your hand from one spot to another to go around that, what we call the Henry hop nowadays. So you had just a number of things there that made the handling of it a bit awkward. Now Henry ended up having a falling out with Winchester. Long story short, Winchester ended up with the rights to the rifle and started selling it there under Winchester repeating arms. And they ended up coming up with one improvement going from the original Henry to the original Winchester rifle, what we call the 1866 nowadays. And the main difference on that was the aforementioned loading gate right there. This is just a flat piece of metal there that can be pushed. You can load rounds into it that way. You don't have to mess with doing them from the front. You didn't have this slot cut in the bottom that dirt and stuff could get into. You didn't have this follower tab that would go all the way back. Because you didn't have that, you could put a hand guard on it. And going from the 1866 to the 1873, they made a few other changes, going from that brass-like receiver to a steel frame. They put these side panels on it to screw off really easy instead of just sliding the panels in on either side. Makes it much easier to maintenance. And they also finally went away from that rimfire cartridge that they had. Moving away from that, started opening up to a lot of other options in these rifles. The round that this rifle is most associated with is 4440, which was a 44 caliber bullet with 40 grains of black powder in the case. Now they made a number of others. They also made a 3840, which was essentially that 4440 case necked down to what they called 38. It's actually 40 caliber, and over time they started being made in more and more calibers. One thing that became very popular with a number of those cartridges was that since they were really pistol cartridges and not rifle cartridges, you could get your revolver and your Winchester in the exact same cartridge. Now generally Winchester would call these 44 WCF or Winchester centerfire, or 38 WCF or 32 WCF. The other manufacturers didn't want to put the Winchester name on their products, so that's where they were more using that 4440 or 3840. There was one other line of Winchesters that came off of this original toggle link design after this, and that was the 1876, which was just slightly scaled up to be able to allow larger cartridges in it. After the 1876, it was all the way to 1886 when John Moses Browning worked on redesigning the action in this to be able to make it hold true rifle cartridges. So now that we're done with the history of it, let's go ahead and take a look at this specific rifle here. This rifle is in 3840. You can see that it's marked 38 caliber right there, which is how they actually marked these. This one, according to the serial number, which is down here on the bottom, is a 1883 production. You can see the model 1873 stamp here on the tang, which you just don't really see a lot of markings like that with just that nice work on it there. You've got all the original Winchester scroll marks on here. You'll see that it has the 1860 patent on there, which is from that original 1860 Henry. You'll also see the 1866 patent for King's Improvement, which is that loading gate right there. There's a few different things that go on there when we pull the lever down. And these are the things you're going to see. The bolt is going to go back. So when the bolt goes back, it's got a little tab on it here on the dust cover. We can see that dust cover slide right there. It will slide the dust cover back and then leave it open. It's interesting that the dust cover that is opened from the motion of the bolt in there is pretty much the same thing that's going on with a modern AR-15, although that's popping it down instead of sliding it back. But that idea of the bolt opening up the dust cover for you on the AR-15 actually goes back quite a ways and was not a new idea to that firearm. Right in here, the extension of the bolt will move the hammer back and will cock the hammer open all of the way. When the bolt goes completely all the way back, the last thing that happens is the elevator pops up. You'll see the elevator right here with the nice markings with the caliber on it. And this elevator here is in brass because They didn't want the elevator to rust to the frame, and being different metals, they can't rust together. And as I pull the lever down here, you'll watch the dust cover go back, the bolt move back, and cock the hammer, and the elevator move up. And as we close it, the reverse happens. The bolt moves forward, the elevator here goes down, and then she's ready to fire. We can see as we move the lever here that the toggles bring that bolt all the way back and then bring it forward. There's a couple of bumps on the lever here and there that end up hitting that spring right there. That spring is connected to the lifter block in there, and it is those little bumps on there that end up hitting that spring and causing the lifter to move. So this will go back. That will move the bolts back. It gets to about there. As soon as we hit that, you can see the lifter right there pop up. We'll move this back like that. Gets to about there, and then the other bump on the lever there will push that spring and close the lever there, and ends up locking that toggle into place there. Now you'll see in here, you can see what's going on with the bolt as we work the lever here. The bolt goes back. If there was a round in the chamber right now, the bolt would be grabbing that round and pulling it out to right there. Then what happens is, as the lifter goes up, that round is kicked out by the ejector. Also, a round that was down here in the tube going that way has now moved up into there. The lifter block there partially blocks the exit from the magazine tube so that no other rounds can pop out there. You'll see the bolt move forward there, chamber that round, and then at the very end, it pops down. As soon as it pops down, the opening is open there, and another cartridge from inside the magazine pops out into there. Then it's just a matter of repeating the process until you're empty. The hammer on here actually has the 3 positions. It's all the way up here in the fired position. You do have a half cocked position where the trigger is disabled, and fully cocked, which would be ready to fire. We've got a couple of safeties on it. We've got a little button right here, and as we push that, you'll see that there's a block right here behind the trigger that goes up when that is pushed. As long as that piece is down there, the trigger can't go back. But when the lever goes up, pushes that up, that goes out of the way, and then it could actually fire. We also have this little tab right here that turns. When that turns like that, it locks the hammer into place. Now, some of the other features on here are going to be the sights. You have a number of different sights. Some of them had flip-up sights. Some of them had these type here, which have this little thing here that pushes forward and bumps that up. Front sight here is just a small little blade. In this case, the blade is made out of brass here, so it's a little bit different color, which makes it a little bit easier to pick up. Now, this one has an octagonal barrel on the front of it there, which was an option. I really like the look of the octagonal barrels. Most people really like these a lot. The octagonal barrels do add a lot of weight to the rifle. And while that might sound like a bad idea to have this extra weight on it, we'll see if I can demonstrate this here. The extra weight does make this thing balance really remarkably well. I mean, all the way out to there. Okay, there's somewhere around here. Right around there is going to be the center of balance on this thing. But it does make it, when you hold it up there, it's just easy to hold this thing on the target. It doesn't wobble around on you like a lot. That balance is really, you just really can't understate what all that barrel does for the balance of this rifle. And as far as the question, can you shoot these? The answer is, if it's still in good condition, absolutely yes, you can shoot it. Now there are a few things that you need to take into consideration. These were originally made for black powder, so you really need to run black powder rounds through these. They've got that toggle link action going on in there, and you really don't want to try to run too much. Even if you load a smokeless cartridge really light, going to end up putting too much pressure through it there potentially, and could end up blowing the thing up. There's a few places that make some black powder rounds. You can find them. They're a little hard. You can load them yourselves if you're into that. And while we're talking about shooting this, let's go ahead and take a look at some shooting footage. Now this particular one is actually sighted in pretty well for going out to about 50 feet or so. And I probably need to go out another time when I've got someone else with me to be a spotter. It's really difficult to tell where you're hitting at when you have like giant plumes of smoke from the black powder floating around about you. You really need somebody with a spotting scope 20 or 30 feet down to the side of you there looking at your targets to help you see if you're hitting it. And I think it's really nice to be able to get an older firearm like this and be able to actually go out and use it. It's just, I think you can appreciate these so much more when you can go out and actually shoot them and use them and not just have it hanging on a wall somewhere. If you take care of it, these things will last forever. So if you found this video interesting, be sure to give it a thumbs up and a like. You can leave some comments down in there and tell me what you thought about it. If you think there's anything I missed on this or anything that you found interesting. You can also subscribe to my channel and also click the little bell to give you notifications so you can catch all the videos that I post and not miss anything. I'm Jeremy with Poindexter G, and we'll see you next time.